I'm in the big leagues, told her don't miss me. Ballin' like Houston, ayy, feeling like Whitney. I need a bag, bruh, send it through quickly. I'm making his dog, like I'm in the big leagues. Told him that I gotta go, dog.
Yo, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of SED Connects, Cannabis Entrepreneurial Dialogues. This is your host, Danny. If you're someone that's interested in learning more about the cannabis industry through the eyes of brands of color, people of color, and minorities in the industry, make sure to tap in by subscribing to YouTube at SED Connects. Also follow us on Instagram at CED_Connects. We have episodes coming out every Monday at 4:20 p.m. So make sure to tap in. Today's episode is going to be a great one. We have someone that's been in the industry for a few years now. He's done some time for the plant, and from that and from all of his life experiences, him and alongside his partners have developed an amazing brand that I'm excited to share with you guys. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Anthony Alegrete. Is that how I say?
Alegrete.
Alegrete or Alegrete? How do you say?
Alegrete.
Alegrete. Anthony Alegrete, man. What's up, bro?
What's up?
How you
bro?
doing, man?
It's
been a pleasure to have you.
Man, love always.
We've been working together and trying to get this lined up for a minute. So
Yes.
I'm excited that we finally, make this happen. Both of us have our, busy schedules with branding, with life, with children, with it all, man.
Significant others, the whole 9 yards.
Partner, everything, man.
You know what it is, man, and it's a blessing, man. Thank you so much for even having us here on SED Connects, and I'm excited to get into it, man. Like your show's an awesome show, and I've been following the shows for a while now, and I just love the content that you put out. So thanks for having me on the show.
No, for sure, man. Thank you, man. And so as always, for all our viewers, what we like to really do is dive deep into your upbringing. So let us know, what was your upbringing like growing up? Where did you grow up? What was the messaging behind cannabis in your household?
Yeah, so I grew up actually not too far from here. I grew up in North Hollywood.
Okay.
I grew up on Laurel Canyon in between Sherman Way and Van Owen.
All right.
And, back in the day, that area wasn't the best area. There was a lot of, essays in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It was definitely a gang-related neighborhood.
For sure.
And so, I grew up, single mom. My mother only had me, right? So I didn't have any siblings until my dad, remarried years later and then had kids with another woman. But I never lived with them.
Right.
And so, I grew up here in North Hollywood. Cannabis, was always around. I grew up in that era when it was West Coast rap music.
Okay.
Dr. Dre.
Yeah, with the Chronic.
Chronic, Snoop, you know what I mean? Pac, Ice Cube for sure was a big, heavy influence on me. And so that era was the Chronic era.
Yeah, for sure.
There wasn't all these flavors like there is now. It was either it was Indo, Chronic, or Stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I grew up here, in North Hollywood. I went to school in Hollywood, actually, at Hollywood High.
Okay.
So we took the bus. For those of you, I don't know if they still do this, but from, back in the day in the 80s and 90s, you would take the bus from LA to the Valley, but then I was taking the bus from the Valley to LA.
Right.
And so, weed was just kind of always in the background because of the music, because of the culture. And so, I just started smoking at a young age in my, junior high level days. Nothing super crazy.
Yeah.
And my mom was not the most disciplined, so she didn't really trip. And then years later, I found out that she smoked, and then we would smoke together.
And this was all still in your teenage years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, my mom didn't start smoking with me until I was in my late teens.
Got you.
But
I mean, it's understandable, right? If you're a single mom, only child, I'm sure she's probably had multiple jobs or
Correct.
Just
hustling,
putting shit together to make sure that there's probably food at the table.
Exactly.
And that left you to just
my own
be
vices.
out, right?
I was super out. That's kind of where I developed my entrepreneurial experience. I started figuring out how to make money at such a very young age. And so whether I was hustling candy or I was figuring out how to, gamble people at the local arcade playing Street Fighter
right.
for a couple dollars, things like that, and just elevated. So I was always out. So my mom super took care of me, but she was always gone.
Yeah.
And then, you know, mama got to have a life too.
Sure.
So she's, you know, doing her thing. And so I just did my own thing. And I took a hit of a cigar in junior high school.
What was that like?
Horrible.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I coughed ridiculously. I didn't know that you're not supposed to hit a cigar the way that you hit weed. And so I hit the cigar and it fucked me up.
Where'd you get the cigar from?
So one of my buddies brought it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so and that made me not like tobacco from a very young age.
Yeah.
So I never really had that tobacco smoke around me. And my mom had asthma, so she definitely didn't smoke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Tobacco.
Yeah.
And so weed was just always around. And, you know, in the Valley, this is kind of the epicenter of Southern California weed. You know, all the weed came down from Humboldt or from wherever it did, and it hit the Valley.
Right.
You know, you got SFVOG and all these, you know, older strains. And so I was just smoking weed, man.
Yeah. And so walk me through, like, once you tapped into, you know, smoking weed and, you know, getting into this new lifestyle, I guess you would say, where there was a light switch moment of like the entrepreneurship on that front. Cause you said you touched on like selling candy and you know, doing the whole arcade thing. But when did you start flipping, or at least the idea clicked where like, I could sell this too?
Yeah, so that actually came many, many years later. I had always been a hustler and doing different things, and you know, I don't glamorize any of it, and you know, I regret, you know, committing crime to you know, pay for my lifestyle. But you know, we were poor, you know, so we didn't have the extras, right? And so we wanted the better things, the better clothes, the better shoes, eventually the better cars, eventually, you know, all those kinds of things. So we went and hustled to do it. And I always had a rule that I would never and this was, I guess, maybe just my way of like rationalizing it, but I never did anything that affected an individual.
Okay.
So like I used to hustle videotapes. This is before CDs were out.
Yeah, and for those that are watching, the cassette plate tapes are like, has a little film and all that. Yeah,
back in the day, A and B side, and then the movies back in the day. So the way that it worked back in the day was there was independent distributors.
Okay.
So before there was so DVDs, you know, changed the game.
Oh, you're talking about film, like the
VHS tapes.
Oh, got you. I'm thinking cassette tapes,
but that
VHS.
Era too,
same shit. Yeah, for sure.
Cassette tapes is music. VHS is for movies.
Films. Yeah.
So same technology.
Right.
And so I used to hustle when I was like 16 to like 22, 23 years old. I used to hustle videotapes because back then everything was on VHS.
Right.
And so back in the day, we would get a video. It would come out for rent first.
Okay.
So I don't know if you remember, there used to be all these different rent places.
Yeah,
Blockbuster and Hollywood Video being the big ones.
Hollywood Video. Yeah,
you know, but there would be like
the smaller mom and pop shops.
Bob's Videos down the street, right? So the way that the model worked was that a movie would come out, and before it went to distribution of selling it everywhere, it would be only at the rentals. So you couldn't buy the VHS tapes.
Yeah.
You had to rent them for like a 6-month period. And then once the rental phase was over, then they would start releasing them at places like Sam Goody or The Warehouse. These are all places that are Circuit City, or all places that are out of business now. But anyways, so you would get these, you would get this rental phase. Well, at that time, the VHSs were worth $80 to $100.
Damn.
Right? Because if you remember losing one, you'd have to pay $80 to $100.
Yeah.
So there was margin. Well, I figured out how to rack them. And so I would hit all the video spots and I'd rack the videos, and racking means, you know, taking them, you know what I mean? So I always felt like I was doing it to a company as opposed to like an individual. I never wanted to like take anything from an individual person or anything like that. And so
like the whole Robin Hood mentality.
Kind of like that. Yeah. And I look back on it and it was foolish. But I did make a lot of money doing it. And so that's what I did for a really long time in my early adult years. I didn't even sell weed.
Okay.
Now I know Corvain.
Yeah. Corvain being
Corvain Cooper being my partner.
one of your partners in the brand. Okay.
Yeah, and friend of almost 30 years. We know each other from high school, and he knows me from that too. And doing the whole tape thing and video thing and whatnot. But then we realized, because we were smokers, we smoked the good shit, and we realized people wanted it.
Okay. And
CV always knew a lot of the people, so we were like, let's figure out how we could get an eighth, smoke the 0.5, sell the 3 grams as individual dubs, and make a margin. And then we did that a few times, and we flipped it to a couple times and a couple times. And
how many times did you guys, like, obviously this was like over time, then like you guys kind of developed this idea of like, or it just clicked?
It just clicked because what happened was we got the good shit and the people wanted it more. And back in the day, in the early 2000s, all the D-boys wanted to smoke the good weed.
Right.
So, 40 Tons, which is our brand, which we'll get to later, was moving the Mexican compressed weed.
Right.
It wasn't this good shit.
Yeah. But, and in 2002, you gotta, when you think back, even just when you mentioned earlier about music, Dr. Dre just dropped Chronic 2, so everyone's really on this chronic wave if you're thinking culturally, music, and where we're at in LA, because I remember that too. Like, I remember growing up and everyone was bumping Chronic back in 2000 with all that.
But there was an availability issue. It was only available here in Cali.
Yeah.
So
okay.
It made it really expensive everywhere else. And where something is really expensive, what does that create? Margin.
Yeah.
So this is why you start shipping packs out of town in all illegal goods, for that matter, or non-illegal goods. It's about finding something at a lower margin, and then the logistics of it is what makes it more valuable in other places because they can't get it.
Yeah.
So at the time, all the D-boys or the fly guys or the people that, were hustlers wanted to smoke the good stuff. And so we started, and that's we evolved into doing that. And, racking and doing things like that, like, it's nerve wracking, and, you catch petty thefts and you catch, commercial.
But there's a rush to it too, no?
I mean, yes and no. I never did it for the rush. I did it for the money.
You did it for the money. But
I did
even
it to
then,
take care of myself. And and what I loved about that hustle was it was only me. So if I got in trouble, it was just me. There was no one else, unless I went racking with someone else. But I never liked going racking with someone else because there was only a limited amount of things that we could rack, and I wanted to rack it all. Yeah. So it was like they were my competition.
That makes sense.
So anyways, back to the cannabis. We didn't start selling cannabis till like 2003.
All right.
2004-ish. But I'm an adult come 1998, right? I turned 18 in 1997. Right. Okay. So by 1998, I'm full functioning as an adult. I'm living on my own. I'm figuring out how to hustle. And so cannabis was just always in the peripheral because we just consumed it.
Right, right. Okay. So in 2003, we're in 2003 now, and you have these out of town buyers. You have this margins that you guys are now looking to meet. What happened then?
Oh man, we from a quarter to a key to the ROC. We just flipped and flipped and flipped and flipped and figured out how to flip more, and figured out how to do it in a way where like everything about it is a business. The only thing that was not a business was the inventory.
Sure.
But if you're going to grow anything and scale anything, you have to apply certain business principles, certain practices, organization, accounting, logistics. All of these things are all business practices that you need to have on anything that you scale. Our inventory was just illegal.
Right. And so, but how many times did you fuck up on, like, let's say accounting, or let's say on all these principles that you just listed, to figure out this is what I need to fix to streamline your logistics in business? Well,
thankfully, I never fucked up to the point where it could cause, because in this world, it's either your freedom or your life, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, most of the time, you make mistakes and you get to live to fight another day, right? So you kind of have to move in a certain way where you don't scale bigger than what you can handle. right? And you have to incorporate things like security, and you have to incorporate, and not just security of self, security of the mission.
Sure.
Right, putting the extra layer of tape on something, making sure that the popcorn is there, making sure that, you know, you do 2 day versus 1 day versus 3 day, making sure the locations that you pick aren't in bad neighborhoods where you're going to automatically be profiled. All these little things you kind of have to know going into it. And I was blessed that I had a lot of older people kind of guide me.
Right.
People from the crack and cocaine era of the 70s and 80s, where they were looking at, you know, dinosaur years for the things that they were doing. And, you know, none of us knew that you could get a life sentence or 20, 30, 40, 50 years for weed.
Right.
Right. Everyone thought it's like whatever. And 96 was when it went quasi legal.
Right.
So
at least here in California.
At least
right?
here in California,
Yeah.
right? So it's 2003, 2004. You're not thinking that this is the type of stuff that can really cause you harm. In fact, we weren't, well, personally, I was never afraid of the law catching us. I was always afraid of getting robbed and stolen from, and the people at the shipping centers would steal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And or you're when you're sending your money back, you'd lose more in your money getting stolen than you did in product getting seized.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, that was tricky, and figuring out the ways to do all that. And, you know, it all just taught me ingenuity. I don't support, or let me rephrase, I don't glorify that we did those things, you know, that we sold weed without a license. But we just don't believe the punishments fit the crimes.
Right. Yeah, and I've heard you say, you know, countless times that, like, you know, there's folks that, you know, sell homes without a license, or they'll sell other items without, you know, without the quote unquote license, and
they get fined.
Right, they get fined, they get ticketed, they get a slap on the wrist, and
even if they do jail time, it's not like ungodly numbers. Right. Right, and it has to have like a super significant amount of loss take place. Yeah. Right, like when you defraud someone out of, you know, their life savings, let's say, you know, $1 million, right? Like, you're really hurting someone. What are you doing when you're selling the plant? Right? You're not hurting anyone, right? There's no victims that are being affected, right? Right. In addition to the whole medicinal thing, in addition to the whole, you know, quasi-legal thing, it's like there's all these factors that make cannabis gray. Right. And unfortunately, the way that the laws work with this plant, or did work with this plant, put a lot of people away. Yeah. And so with that transitions to like the time that you served. Sure. How did that play out? Like, what happened the first time around? Yeah. And what was that experience like for you? So, you know, first off, there's no amount of time that I did that could ever compare to anything that my brothers did, or my boy CV did, or any of the other people that I know did. I look at it as like, you know, small little vacation time, right? Like I've done a total of, you know, right around a little over 4.5 years, like right around 4.5 years total, and that's on multiple stints. Sure, it wasn't even all at one time. So, you know, I always want to pay homage and respect to those that like did real time, you know? Yeah. And that's understandable. It sucked. I mean, obviously being away from my family, being away from my kids, you know, to this day, I still feel, you know, I left one of my children when they were 2 weeks old, you know? And so to this day, I still feel like I owe him, you know what I mean? Because I was gone for him at that time. And then, you know, my oldest kid had to deal with it 3 times. So when he was 3 years old, when he was 6 or 7 years old, and then again when he was 12 years old, right? He's now 22. So like that really took a real toll on me. And, you know, obviously, you know, leaving L'Oreal, leaving my family, you know, leaving all of the things of freedom, you know, all that kind of sucked. But I mean, it is what it is. You know, I always had gotten in trouble for the financial side of weed, and not really the selling of it. So I had gotten in trouble because I had, you know, cash on me at the airport, you know, a couple $100,000. Okay. And so when you get hit with a couple $100,000 worth of cash, you either get hit with terrorism, or you get hit with narcotics. And clearly I'm not a terrorist. Sure. So they hit you with that. And then, you know, they test the money, and then the money comes back positive for drugs on it, which 90% of
Right. You would think, right.
But it's all that. And I mean, there were some other things in it that made me look guilty and whatnot. And so, I had to go, do all that type of stuff. But I always use those experiences to educate myself. So I got
so is that what happened while you were there? Like you're sitting in the cell, like before even all that, like, and you touched on it a little with, the impact that that it left on your child, right? We good? Okay. But before all that, like when you first got booked, like paint that picture for me of like the emotions that went through knowing that, like, not knowing at the time, like, how long am I going to be here? What does that look like? And how does you mentioned L'Oreal, your wife, like, what were all of those emotions going on during those first 2 stints that you did, right?
Yeah.
And with all those emotions and obviously time to think, right? Yeah. How did that all transpire for you to try to be better every time? If that makes any, like, I know it's a long ass question,
No.
winded one, but
so like I felt disappointed, right? In myself that I allowed this to happen. I had built, I was the first one out of my crew, and my family for that matter, to buy a home. I was 22 years old when I bought my first house. So like, I always believed in taking the money and investing it. I mean, I went through my phase of buying the stupid jewelry and cars and all that kind of stuff. But I was always an investor real early on in life, and believed in buying assets. And so there was a level of disappointment, like, damn, I just put in all this work to like get these assets and now I'm about to lose it.
Yeah.
So that there was that feeling. Then there was just the feeling of like, fuck, man, now I got to go through this bullshit. But like, thankfully, not until the very end, which was the last one, I never really did anything that warranted, being sent away for such a super long amount of time. So it was always like, this is just like an obstacle that we're going to have to face. And so it was more, the feelings were more so about like letting my people down, letting my family members and my kids and all that down. My first time when I had gotten arrested, like my kid was in the car.
Oh shit.
So they took my baby from me, you know what I'm saying? And
right.
It was fucked. I was taking him to school. So it was like, that actually traumatized him pretty bad. Cause I remember years later when he was like, so he was 3.5 when it happened. He was maybe like 8 or 7, and we got pulled over by the cops. And like he instantly freaked out and was like, Dad, they're not going to take you away, are they? Please don't let them take you. I'm like, son, it's okay. I'm just getting pulled over for a ticket. Right. Everything's okay. But like I seen the terror in his face when that had happened. And so that's the feelings of regret and things like that. Like, you know what I mean? Was from, the way I felt during that time. Sure. So, as far as like the change, I was fool. I figured out how to hustle better. I didn't learn my lesson.
Okay, right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I stepped it up a notch and, tried to do the whole going straight thing, but then realized, there's more money in this. Because I've always had an entrepreneurial brain. Right. So I'm always trying to figure out margin and trying to figure out how to like scale things. It's just the inventory was...
Right. Sure. And
illegal.
and being in LA, there's this culture around and there's culture, there's this I don't know if like a fantasy or romanticizing about like prison life and all these things, right? Like just in the culture, right? Just living here, there's this mindset depending on where you grew up,
sure,
right? Like with movies, like especially back then, right? Early on, they had like Blood In, Blood Out. They had like American Me. All this that was put into our communities to like, in a sense, glorified, right? Glorified and glorified, I should say, glorified.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that going on, especially around that time frame, right? Sure. And so now you're talking about like your children see this. visitations,
Yeah.
and the struggles that you and I heard somewhere, I forgot which episode or which podcast, that there was also struggle that you've experienced with your wife about visitation and just that struggle. Like, can you share a little bit about that as well?
Yeah. So to start from your beginning, the movies glorify those things and they glorify all that stuff. And, LA culture is typically known for gang culture. Right. So no matter what high school you went to, even in the good neighborhoods, there was gangs there because people were bussed in. Right. So, someone got shot and killed my first day of school at Hollywood High. And
people would think like Hollywood is this
in the 90s, it was active,
right?
I mean, super active. I want to say an 18th Street got killed. You know what I mean? It was Hispanic on Hispanic gang violence, my first day of school. So he got shot when the bell rang, right in the very front of the school. Someone shot him, and so like that culture was deep back in those days, right? And what's funny is Hollywood High, it was two things. You were either like in gangs or you were in like drama school, right? Like like the Fame, like the movie Fame, you know what I mean? Like that's what it was. It was no like, I don't even know what regular school means, but like it wasn't regular. It was sure. Like, it was either you were trying to be like a star or you were like in the gang.
That's so funny to like, just for folks to like even just kind of picture that in any way. Like,
I always say like you were either gay or you were in a gang, because that's what it was back then, right? Like there was, and I was neither, and I was friends with everybody, right? So I got along with everybody. You know what I mean? I was always the guy that red and blue made green. You know what I mean? I was never about a color. I was never about a gang. I was never about, and I wasn't racist. Right. I was a white dude that had, culture around him from a young age to where like, I could get it in with pretty much everybody. Yeah. So how did that play out for you then when you're in prison? So then, and were you in prison or were you in county or were you in both? Both. Okay. So that's a great point. So I've been in the state and in the federal, and in the state it's way more active. Well, it's active in the federal too, at the high levels, but in the lower levels in the feds, it's not as bad. But anywhere you're in California, it's always bad, and in the state, it's always bad. And at that time, there was riots going on. I've been in riots; they're not fun, right? And so, the way that I survived that was being me. I never pretended to be something that I wasn't. Okay. I was never pretending to be this big racist type of guy, or a guy that. That was like a skinhead type of dude, or like typical white guys are usually that. I was never that. I was just a dude who was a business dude who got in trouble. And I was blessed that every time I went to a yard, my bunkmate or my cellie was like the runner of the yard, who was like, the big racist dude, or not Aryan Brotherhood, because those guys are in the shoe, but like one level below that. Yeah. Right. And so once they knew who I was and they got to know me, they realized I'm not none of that stuff. Yeah. So like I actually became like an outlet for people like that, because they would talk business with me and they would talk philosophy and they would talk game and knowledge. Yeah. And so that's what happened. And I remember one time the dude that ran the whole prison and ran our tier, he was my cellie. And I fought with him in the cell, and he fucked me up. And he was 45 years old, and I was 26 or 27, right? Okay. So like he's old enough to be my dad. And he fucked me up because we were playing chess, and I was talking shit to him, like clowning, and he got offense to it, and he cracked me. But he busted my nose up. But then right when he cracked me, I swung on him, and we just got down in the cell. And then as soon as it ended, he literally sat me down and cleaned me up. And would literally clean me up like a dad would to his kid, and then there was no issues ever again. That was it. So, so that was that. So, sometimes in certain places it could be active. L'Oreal will say that, but I mean, she's visited me every place I go. But I always just had to tell her like, just be cautious and just know in certain places, visiting with your another race, like it could cause issues. So you just need to make sure that you're always on your toes and always on different things like that. So like it was never an issue because I was never a gang member, and I was never one of those guys that pretended to be something that I wasn't. I was just a regular guy, goofy, laughing, having a good time,
right? And
trying to bring positivity to the jail. Kind of when you interview Corvain, ask him about him, because he was in really bad places like murders and stuff like that, and he would always tell you he was the life. So no one wants to fuck that up.
Yeah,
the guys that are walking around all tough guy, all pissed off, all wanting to fight everyone, those are the guys that get the trouble brought to them because they're not bringing positive energy to a negative environment.
Right.
So that's how I always got down, and I stayed to myself, and I read books, and I worked out, and I always just naturally gravitated to like the shot callers. So like the shot callers of the essays were always my good buddies. The shot caller of the blacks were always cool with me, and the shot callers of the whites were cool with me because we could talk intellectually.
Right.
So that's kind of how I survived. I mean, I'm 6 foot nothing, 100 and nothing skinny guy. So
and that's when that's wet, right?
Right. So it's not like I'm this big old dude but survival in environments where you're the minority requires wit and requires respect. Yeah. And if you have wit, you have respect. Look, you back a rabbit in the corner, it's going to bite its way out. So no matter what, as long as you show respect, as long as you have to fight when you have to fight, and as long as you have humor to you, those three characteristics mixed together, you'll usually have success.
Yeah.
And you won't have to fight much. Right? You only fight when you have to. And most people fight. Why? Because disrespect happens.
Yeah.
But if you're not disrespecting people, then you're really not fighting. You're only fighting when it's like a group of you guys because you have to.
Right.
But you're not, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Fights come from disrespect. So, that was that. And, all those experiences kind of molded me. And, I've been all over the world even prior to going to prison. So I got to experience different cultures. My mother's Jewish, my dad's Christian. So I got to experience a lot of different religion in my life. I'm Italian, right? So I got Italian culture. I've got Eastern European culture. I've got Jewish culture. I got poor culture, growing up in apartments. Right. My first house was a house that I bought. So I've been in a lot of environments.
Absolutely.
And so that is what I think has helped me survive in many different environments. Right.
And so during your time there, and your second stint, you got out, then where was the light bulb to like say, you know what, I want to do better for myself, and you then took a chance to enroll yourself into college? Yeah,
so the second time I did that, I decided, the second time L'Oreal moved. So she moved to Las Vegas.
Okay.
So I had to change. I had to get out of my environment because she moved, right. And so I was glad. Cheaper cost of living and start over new. And so I went out there and met different people. L'Oreal worked at one of the casinos.
Okay.
And so she worked in one of the like gyms of the casino, but like the gyms there are like, spas, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so then I got to meet her coworkers at like different, work events and different things like that. And I met this dude who was a physical trainer.
Okay.
Who's now like the face of yoga for Nike.
Oh, damn.
He's a world traveler, probably, has 50, 8, 9, even 10 figure clients that he trains, right? He's top. I was with him when he was $10 a session.
Yeah.
In fact, he won't admit to this, but you know what I'm saying? I helped him get to where he was.
Okay. You guys heard it here.
He knows who he is. But no, he deserves his own respect because, he worked hard to become what he was. But everybody needs a Dame Dash or a Rich Paul.
Yep.
So we moved to Vegas and I quit the game. So I'm out. I'm working. I'm doing my thing. I'm cleaning pools. And then I meet this dude, and then we formed this charity called the Jump for Joy Foundation.
Okay.
and then we end up creating this gym called Real Results. And so we were like basically running the health and wellness industry in Vegas because this dude was top of the line. And so he started training me when I first met him. And when I did a couple sessions with him at the UNLV gym, because that's where he was training out of.
Okay.
I caught the bug for school.
Yeah.
And I was around campus and I'm like, I'm 30 years old. Like, I need to get back into this. I need to put some distance between my bad paper and put a good piece of paper. So my rap sheet is the bad paper. The good paper is that college degree.
Sure.
So I decided to go back to college while I'm getting trained.
And just for those out there, you know, the idea of like going to like a major university like UNLV, you know, you would think like, oh, I could only go, you know, from high school because I had to have these grades, or maybe a community college and have to go this route to transfer. Like, what did that process look like for you to get into?
That's a great question.
UNLV.
So most of the colleges expect a certain grade point average up to the age of like 25, 26.
Okay.
So when you're 25, 26 or whatever that age is, I don't know exactly, but it's around that number and below, it goes off of your high school transcripts. When you're an adult,
right,
it doesn't go off of that. So it quasi does, but it's not as like strict.
Sure.
Right. And not for nothing, but I got good grades in high school.
Okay.
So even though I ditched and got in trouble and was in and out of jail when I was 16, 17 years old, for dumb things, I still got good grades. In fact, to this day, you know, my counselors and teachers would always talk shit to me because they're like, why are you ditching? Why are you doing this? And wanting me to be the lead in the high school play because it was drama class for Hollywood High. And I was able to balance both. So there wasn't this strict process to get into college at the university level. I had also done some community courses when I was 18 years old, years back, that, you know, maybe I got like 30 credits at Valley College that I was able to use as a transfer.
Oh, okay. So that it never like expires or anything. Okay,
never.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, it
that's
never
really
expired. In fact, it helped me because it allowed me to it made me like reduce school by like a whole semester because I had those classes.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I did that. He was training me. I started to see gains. You know, I've been a thin individual my whole life, and he had helped bulk me up, and like, you know, I was feeling it, and I was feeling the vibe of this college.
Yeah.
And he knew that lady that ran the financial aid department. Her name was Miss Broom. I love Miss Broom, man. June Broom. She was just a beautiful soul. She could be your auntie. She literally could be looks just like L'Oreal if L'Oreal was 20 years older. And she was a beautiful, beautiful soul. And when she met me, because she had already known my friend, the trainer guy, she just hooked me up. So got me all right in, got the financial aid, knew my story. I'm on parole. You know what I mean? She, you know, like, I'm here to change, you know. And like, I was ready to just crush college. Yeah. I wanted to take it for everything that it was. I saw that all these young kids were taking advantage of it, partying.
Sure.
Nobody was using college to like really, really push themselves.
Right.
They were just using it as like, oh, I got to go to college.
Yeah. I mean, and you get it, right? Like that happens.
You don't need college, especially in this day and age, right?
Right. And we talked about that like on the last episode where like, even myself, I touched on like, at this point in my life, I feel like I really don't need to go. There's all those thoughts that go through like entrepreneurs like heads of like, do you really need to go? Do I really need to go through that? But I heard your perspective on how it helped you with going to school.
The 1% of people that take college serious are the ones that are going to super excel. And the reason why I say that is because in today's world, it's an information age, right? So you can go online and learn a trade, YouTube University, right? Study somebody. If I want to learn how to open up a manufacturing and distribution, I don't need to go to school for that. I could just shadow You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
However, if you take college serious to where you utilize all of your professors as mentors, you join clubs and organizations like student government or a business fraternity or whatever it is, a multicultural organization, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You then learn what's called interpersonal development. You learn how to interact with other people. You learn how to work on teams. You learn how to function in environments as if you would in the real world.
Right. Using it as like a networking resource like
as practice.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Networking for sure.
Right.
Student government, for instance. Instead of being a senator of a state, you're a senator of your college.
Yeah.
Right? You have to follow Robert's Rules of Order. You have to vote. You have to work on budgets. You have subcommittees. You're learning government.
Yeah.
Right? And how to govern and how to sway and how to get vote and how to work and how to do things, right? So that is just one use case for college. There's fraternities. There's business programs. There's all these things. And I took advantage of all of it. I won the Governor's Cup, which was a business plan competition identical to Shark Tank, right?
Okay.
You have to create a business plan.
Yeah.
You have to submit it. The top 6 people from the whole state get picked from all the universities, and then you got to pitch for 20 minutes in front of a panel just like Shark Tank of high net worth individuals.
And what was your pitch?
So we had a thing called 18 at 18. This was an app. This was before apps were really big. This was in 2010, 2011. And so
that's crazy to think 2010, 2011, apps weren't a thing.
Yeah, they were very
right
small.
Now it's
it's everything.
That's all it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So we assembled a team. My boy Will Wong was a big part of that. And then we had a developer on the team named Nate. He was a 17-year-old kid at a high school that had developed an app called 69 Sex Positions, and it made like $150,000.
You know what just caught my
stick figures of 69 different sex positions of stick figures, and then telling you what that sex position is. Dude, he had like 100,000 downloads.
What right now though, what you just said kind of before the whole sex thing just threw me off. But what was it like being a 30-year-old and working with
the young energy,
the
like
17-year-old and the 20-year-old?
It was my playground because everybody looked to me as their leader and their mentor. So I got all these people to basically work with me, right? Everybody's hungry, young, passionate.
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm coming into this place already being to prison twice, seeing people stabbed, having a family. Like, I'm not here for no bullshit. I'm here to get the work done.
Right.
You know what I mean? I walked into the college. I'll tell a quick little story. I walked into the College of Business in the marketing department, and this was before I officially enrolled. It was literally the week that I enrolled. I took the elevator to the 4th floor, which was the marketing department.
Yeah.
I'll never forget this dude. His name was Mr. Lee. Fuck Mr. Lee. And
fucking Mr. It's always a Mr. Lee.
And so
it's always.
So Mr. Lee was the head of the marketing department at the time of UNLV. And I walk in there, I'm this young, hungry bull. And I'm like, hey, I got this really good idea for an app. And, you know what I mean? I'm about to come here to this school. And man, is there any teachers or anybody in this marketing department that could help me and mentor me and talk to me? He shooed me. He's like, get out of here. We don't do that kind of thing around here. You know what I mean? You have to be a student. Kick rocks.
If it would have been anyone else,
they'd have been
demoralized
defeated, and they wouldn't even have probably gone to school.
Right.
His office was the first office down a long hall. I walk out of his office. I look to the elevator. I look down the hall. I see a door open way down at the end of the hall.
Let me give it a shot.
I say, fuck this dude.
Yeah.
I walked all the way down to the hall, saw this teacher, saw the plaque on the wall, and it said marketing. And I said, excuse me, ma'am. I have this idea. Boom, boom, boom. She goes, come on. Excuse me. Come on in. Come on in. Yeah, tell me about it. Boom, boom, boom. She just completely embraced me. She says, okay, so listen, I'm not the right one for you,
Right.
but I'm going to connect you with a student here on campus who runs the marketing department of some organization.
Yeah.
And I'm going to connect you with this professor named Dr. Runge, who's on the 3rd floor. Boom. Sends me to Dr. Runge. Dr. Runge is my dog. I love that professor. She testified for me 10 years later in court to my character because she believed in me and flew 3,000 miles to support me. Dr. Runge opened me with open arms, and I won her the Governor's Cup.
Nice.
So she was my faculty professor that you have to, because as a student, you had to have a faculty on your team. So you had to pick a faculty. She was the one that I picked, and I won her the Governor's Cup. And to this day in her office, there's this big like glass trophy that's about this big from the Governor's Cup that was mine, that I won, but I gave it to her because she supported me. She believed in me. She saw the second chance that I was looking for. And I told her, and she'll tell you this, when I first met her, I said, I'm not taking this college for granted. I'm a 2-time felon. I'm 30 years old. I don't got time like these 18, 19-year-olds do. And please just give me all your game and knowledge.
Yeah.
And she did.
It was received well.
It was received. And so I tell that story to different people.
Yeah.
I think it's the first time I've ever told it on a podcast. And she remembers it. And she loves when I tell it because it was true.
Yeah. And people need to hear it, right? Like people need to understand that like, if you are going to take that route of going back to school, like the steps that you can take.
That's why it worked for me.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's, and it can help someone else, right? Like to be able to have those initial conversations with like the folks that you're looking at, right?